Good evening. You're watching the news at 6 with me, Ishan Russell. The news at 6 is all about the day's biggest developing stories, and we'll be filling in on them over the next half hour. But first, the headlines that we're tracking right now. President address to both houses kickstarts the budget session of Parliament. President calls for debates instead of disruptions. Amid signs of a stormy session, Prime Minister Narendra Modi hopes for constructive debate in Parliament, says government has risen above formalities to reach out to opposition. Rajya Sabha adjourns after obituary references to, among others, late Nepalese Prime Minister Sushil Koirala. After 10 days of violence, Haryana stares at a huge human and economic cost left behind by the violence during the Jat reservation agitation. Our top story this evening, the budget session of Parliament started today with President Pranab Mukherjee addressing both houses, reminding the members that Parliament is a place for debate and discussions and not for disruption or obstruction. The President listed out the broad initiatives taken by the Union government and objectives for the coming year.
President Pranab Mukherjee on Tuesday calling for debates instead of disruptions in Parliament. The budget session of Parliament will see the Modi government presenting the railway and general budgets while seeking the passage of crucial bills.
Our Parliament reflects the supreme will of the people. Democratic temper calls for debate and discussion and not disruption or obstruction.
The government has held a series of meetings with opposition parties to seek their cooperation for smooth functioning of Parliament and passage of key bills, including the revamp of Goods and Services Tax Bill. The last two sessions have been unproductive after opposition parties led by the Congress disrupted parliamentary proceedings on several issues.
My government will constantly strive for smooth and constructive conduct of the parliamentary business. I urge all members of Parliament to discharge their solemn responsibilities in a spirit of cooperation and mutual accommodation.
Outlining the foreign policy of the government, Mukherjee said India was committed to forge a mutually respectful relationship with Pakistan.
My government is committed for forging a mutually respectful relationship with Pakistan and in creating an environment of cooperation in combating cross-border terrorism. My government believes in a secure and prosperous future for our neighborhood.
The first part of the session will see the unveiling of railway and general budgets for 2016 and 17. It will last till 16th of March. The second one will resume from 25th of April and will last till 13th of May. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, amid signs of a stormy Parliament session, Prime Minister Narendra Modi hoped for a productive budget session and called out for a constructive debate in Parliament. In his customary brief remarks to media on the first day of a Parliament session, the Prime Minister said friends from opposition parties had shown positive attitude during various interactions and highlighted how his government had risen above formalities to reach out to the opposition parties. The Prime Minister also said the opposition should severely criticize the government and highlights its shortcomings, asserting that it will strengthen democracy. The government on Monday said it was ready to discuss the JNU Rao and the Rohit Vemula suicide besides other issues in the Parliament, but urged the opposition to adopt a positive approach.
मैं आशा करता हूं कि सदन का उपयोग गहन विचार विमर्श के लिए होना चाहिए। सरकार की भी भरपूर आलोचना होनी चाहिए। सरकार की कमियां भी उजागर होनी चाहिए और वही एक मार्ग है लोकतंत्र को मजबूत बनाने का, जन सामान्य की आशा आकांक्षाओं को परिपूर्ण करने का। आज भारत की वैश्विक अर्थव्यवस्था में जो स्थिति बनी है उसके कारण विश्व का ध्यान भी भारत के इस बजट सत्र पर है।
Now, boosting public expenditure is one of the toughest challenges facing Finance Minister Arun Jaitley this year before he presents the budget. Last year, he provided 2.4 lakh crore rupees for capital expenditure, but the defence sector took away nearly 38% of that.
At a time when the government needs to urgently kickstart the investment cycle, the finance minister finds himself in a bind. In the last budget, Arun Jaitley increased capital expenditure by 27% over revised estimates for 2014 and 15. It was almost 1.7% of GDP. Economists now suggest increasing the public sector capital expenditure to 3%, something that was last seen in 2004 and 5.
If you have that kind of an investment in the economy, then you will see that a lot of the infrastructure related deficit that we are still grappling with will start getting addressed.
But that in itself is a huge challenge at a time when Jaitley has to provide over 1 lakh crore rupees to implement the 7th Pay Commissions Award and the One Rank One Pension scheme for armed forces. Besides that, government's non-tax receipts are also expected to fall short of budget estimates. Realization from this investment is expected to be around 25,000 crore against a target of 69,000 crore rupees. Due to weak economic growth, direct tax collection is expected to be lower than budget targets. Although the government is hopeful of achieving revenue collections due to rise in indirect tax collections, above all, Jaitley has to deal restricting fiscal deficit to 3.9% of the GDP.
I think it's very important for the government to increase the public expenditure even at the cost of relaxing the FRBM target. And we have not achieved till now, not in a single year we have achieved the FRBM target since 2003. But I don't really understand why we are sticking to this number.
Lack of private investment and subdued business sentiment make it imperative for the government to sustain the growth rate of over 7%.
Now, if that requires relaxation of the deficit, what I mean is, if the government has to borrow to invest, it could be a worthwhile option to look at.
Global economic slowdown and 2 back-to-back monsoon failures have complicated the finance minister's task. The ray of hope, however, is the telecom spectrum auction next year. Spectrum auction proceeds and lower oil subsidy bill is expected to help the government to increase public expenditure in coming years. Krishnanand Tripaঠি's report for Rajya Sabha Television.
Now, after the joint session of Parliament, the Rajya Sabha met for a short period of time to pay obituary references to former members of the House and several renowned personalities who passed away recently. The House will now meet on Wednesday, which will practically be its first working day.
After the joint sitting of Parliament, the upper house met for a brief while on Tuesday for obituary references. Chairman Mohammad Hamid Ansari led the House in paying tributes to former Nepal Prime Minister Sushil Koirala, who passed away on the 8th of February due to pneumonia.
This House joins the bereaved family, the government and the people of Nepal in mourning the passing away of Shri Sushil Koirala and conveys its heartfelt condolences to them in this hour of grief.
He also mentioned with profound sorrow the passing away of A.B. Bardhan, former CPI General Secretary, Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Mufti Muhammad Saeed, Bandhu Mehto, a former Rajya Sabha member, and Mrinalini Sarabhai, a renowned classical dancer.
To rise in their places and observe silence as a mark of respect to the memory of the departed.
The House also condemned the Pathankot terror attack in January, in which 7 security personnel were killed and several others injured, and the recent encounter in Pampore, in which 2 army captains and 3 CRPF jawans lost their lives.
This House joins me in unequivocally condemning the attacks perpetrated by the terrorist outfits. The loss of precious lives and injury to the people in all these tragic incidents is indeed painful and unfortunate. The House joins me in expressing our heartfelt condolences and sympathy to the bereaved families and pray for the speedy recovery of the injured.
The House also condoled the unfortunate demise of 10 soldiers who died in an avalanche at the Siachen Glacier and extended condolences to their families. Post the obituary references, papers related to different ministries were laid on the table of the House. The House was then adjourned till 11 a.m. on Wednesday.
The House stands adjourned till 11 a.m. on Wednesday, 24th
Bureau
of
Report,
February
Rajya Sabha
2016.
TV.
Now, time for us to take a short break. There's lots more on the other side. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching the news at 6. Now, the Jat stir was called off today. After 10 days, road and rail blockades were lifted, but curfew remains in a few worst affected districts like Rohtak and Jhajjar. Chief Minister Manohar Lal Khattar promised strict action against the rioters. He also came to Delhi to meet Union Minister M. Venkaiah Naidu, who is heading the central committee set up to look into the quota demands by the Jats.
After 10 days of violence, the Jat agitation has left a massive trail of destruction in Haryana. Rohtak, the epicenter of the protests, is a war zone. Not even a single business establishment is functional. Gutted shops, school buildings and shattered vehicles line up the streets. Chief Minister Manohar Lal Khattar visited the town on Tuesday, but was heckled by people protesting against police inaction. The Chief Minister assured adequate compensation to those whose properties were damaged.
इन दंगाइयों ने, इन उपद्रवियों ने दुकानें जलाई हैं अथवा सामान लूटा है, उनकी पहचान करके उनके खिलाफ भी कार्रवाई पूरी की जाएगी। आपको सरकार की ओर से आश्वासन देता हूं कि जिस किसी का जितना भी नुकसान हुआ है, उसकी पूरी भरपाई की जाएगी, उसमें कहीं कोताही नहीं बरती जाएगी।
Stranded commuters had a slight respite after Jat protesters lifted blockade on highways. Railway tracks were also cleared and state bus services resumed after nearly 10 days. However, curfew remained in force in few districts, including Hisar, Rohtak and Bhiwani. The situation was also tense in Sonipat. The army continues to patrol the worst affected areas. Meanwhile, the Punjab and Haryana High Court has asked the Khattar government to file a status report on the Jat agitation by next Monday. 19 people were killed in the agitation, while the loss of property is estimated to run into nearly 35,000 crore rupees. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat has stirred another controversy with his statements on reservation. Bhagwat has suggested that a non-political committee should be formed to decide on who should be eligible for reservation. In an interactive session of Chamber of Commerce in Kolkata on Monday, Bhagwat said, and I quote, "I feel a committee should be formed to decide who are eligible for reservation. The committee should be apolitical so that there are no vested interests. Which section of society should be brought forward and for how long should they be given reservation? A time-bound program should be chalked out regarding it." Bhagwat's comments came in the wake of the centre announcing the setting up of a committee under Union Parliamentary Affairs Minister M. Venkaiah Naidu to examine the quota demand for the Jat community. Bhagwat's statement came in for severe criticism from the opposition, who alleged that this is a suggestion against the spirit of the Constitution.
RSS Sar Sanchalak Mohan Bhagwat ji, he had called for review of reservation in favor of Dalits and backwards. Later on, Bharatiya Janata Party resigned. Then current Lok Sabha Speaker, she expressed regrets on extending of reservation in favor of Dalits and backwards. And now again he calls for a review committee. It reflects a anti-Dalit, anti-poor, anti-backward mindset of Modi government. Congress party wants to respectfully warn as also tell Modi government that we will not accept tampering with or repeal of reservation of the poor of this country, of the Dalit and backward of this country.
कांग्रेस को ये बोलने का अधिकार नहीं है। सभी को याद है 1974 के इमरजेंसी, जो घटना घट रही है वो फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच ही है। इसी कारण ये घटना घट रही है। इमरजेंसी लगाने वाले लोग, लोगों के मुंह पर बंद करने वाले लोग, अभिव्यक्ति को बंद करने वाले कांग्रेस पार्टी को मुंह नहीं है इस पर एक शब्द भी कहे।
The Delhi High Court today deferred the bail petition of JNU Students' Union President Kanhaiya Kumar, even as it directed the Delhi police to file a status report of the investigation in the case by tomorrow. The court also asked JNU students Umar Khalid and Anirban Bhattacharya to surrender before the police.
The Delhi High Court on Tuesday directed the police to file a status report of its investigation in the sedition case of JNU Students' Union President Kanhaiya Kumar. The court's direction came while hearing Kanhaiya's bail plea, which was opposed by the Delhi police. His petition will now be heard on Wednesday.
On behalf of the state prosecution, we accepted notice and sought time to file a status report. There are enough evidence, we have enough documents, we have enough material against this accused, and rather the whole lot.
The Delhi High Court also postponed the hearing on 2 petitions of JNU students, including Umar Khalid, seeking police protection prior to their surrender. The court said they must surrender according to procedure first. The High Court also agreed to hear another petition seeking directions to the police to arrest the 5 JNU students, Umar Khalid, Anant Prakash Narayan, Ashutosh Kumar, Ram Naga and Anirban Bhattacharya. The JNU Vice-Chancellor had refused to give permission to the Delhi police to enter the university campus on Monday.
JNU के परिसर के अंदर में अगर मैं ये कहूँ कि एक कन्वेंशंस के मुताबिक जो एक सैंक्टिटी होती है एजुकेशनल कैंपसेस की, उस सैंक्टिटी का वो दुरुपयोग करके वो अपने आप को अभी कानून से दूर रखने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं।
Meanwhile, student wings of JNU, Aam Aadmi Party and the NSUI held a protest march over the ongoing JNU crisis and death of Hyderabad Central University student Rohit Vemula last month. Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi also joined the protesters and accused the Modi government and the RSS of crushing voices of dissent.
जहां भी हिंदुस्तान का नौजवान कल की बात करना चाहता है, नई सोच की बात करना चाहता है, भविष्य की बात करना चाहता है, वहां आरएसएस के लोग उसे कहते हैं नहीं, तुम कल की बात मत करो, आज की बात मत करो, हमें सिर्फ बीते हुए समय की बात करनी है।
28-year-old Kanhaiya Kumar was arrested earlier this month on charges of sedition. In his petition, Kanhaiya has contended that he was falsely implicated in the case as he had not raised any anti-national slogan. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Time now to take a look at what else is making news around the country and nationwide. The Supreme Court had dismissed a public interest litigation seeking to make intelligence agencies like the IB, RAW and NTRO accountable to Parliament. Top court said that trying to get into the domain of intelligence may dent national security. The petition submitted that the agencies were being misused for political purposes and there was an urgent need to make these organizations accountable to Parliament. The Mumbai court acquitted actor Dilip Kumar in a 19-year-old cheque bounce case today. A cement company alleged that in 1998 that it invested around 1 crore rupees in the trading company where the actor was one of the directors. However, during the time of repayment, the cheques that the trading company had issued had all bounced. The actor was not present in court as he was granted exemption from personal appearance. A Delhi court today reserved its order on a criminal complaint filed by Finance Minister Arun Jaitley for 9th of March. Jaitley had in December last year filed a complaint against Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal and 5 other AAP leaders for allegedly defaming him in the DDCA controversy. Some international news now, and the United States-Russia brokered Syria ceasefire will take effect at midnight on the 27th of February. The announcement came at a time when Syria is reeling under a civil war. However, Syrian rebels see flaws in the truce plan as the ceasefire will not apply to Islamic State and Al-Qaeda's Nusra Front.
A ceasefire agreed amid spurting violence in Syria. The US and Russia have announced a planned cessation of hostilities in the war-torn country beginning from this weekend. The joint statement came after Obama telephoned his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin to discuss efforts to establish the cessation of hostilities.
This cessation of hostilities will apply to all parties in Syria except for ISIL, except for al-Nusra and other terrorist groups that have been so designated by the UN Security Council. In the coming days, the United States and our ISSG partners on the ceasefire task force will undertake a series of steps to implement the cessation of hostilities by February 27th.
Что касается ИГИЛ, Джабхат ан-Нусры и других террористических организаций, признанных в качестве таковых Советом Безопасности Организации Объединенных Наций,
Syrian rebels called it a flawed truce. Diplomats meanwhile said the truce might not be worth the paper it was written on. The UN is also skeptical as it said cessation of hostilities excluding Islamic State and Nusra Front militants could be a big challenge in terms of monitoring the ceasefire. However, Turkey welcomed the truce plan.
If you have a ceasefire, cessation of hostilities, which does not cover territory which is dominated by al-Nusra and Daesh, ISIL, then that is, of course, a huge challenge for us in terms of monitoring. And that we have to face later. But it is a very complicated situation.
The cessation of hostilities allows the Syrian army, allied forces and Syrian opposition to respond in self-defense. A significant loophole which allows further attacks, including airstrikes against Islamic State and other militant groups. Rebels feel Assad and Russia will make it as an excuse to pound opposition-held territories. A mere truce, just on papers, is the last thing Syria needs at this critical juncture. A fresh UN report said Syria is a fractured state on the brink of collapse, with rampant war crimes by both Assad forces and IS. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, a US think tank reported that China may be installing a high-frequency radar system in the disputed South China Sea. Latest satellite images showed that China could have constructed a buried bunker and lighthouse on the northern portion, along with a helipad, communications equipment, and a quay with a loading crane. These installations will significantly bolster China's ability in the region. China has maintained that it has all the rights to construct anything on its own territory. The report comes a day before Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit to the United States, at which US expresses concern about China's assertive territorial claims, to which Beijing said that military deployments in the South China Sea were no different from US deployments on Hawaii. Now, the US has refuted the Chinese claim that no other country has a claim on Hawaii, unlike the South China Sea.
你提到的这个几个岛礁都是无可争议的中国领土，那么中国在自己的领土上进行一些建设，这完全是中国主权范围内的事情。中国在驻守的有关南沙岛礁上部署有限的必要的防卫措施，也是行使国际法赋予任何主权国家的自保权，这是无可非议的。
Some more international news now in Global Buzz. Gun and grenade attacks greeted UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon on his arrival to Burundi capital Bujumbura. 3 people were killed. The UN is mediating in the political crisis because the president has had his controversial third-term victory. His opponents have called it unconstitutional. More than 400 people have been killed since July amid charges of extrajudicial measures. At least 29 people were killed in a cyclone that hit Fiji over the weekend. About 8,500 people are still sheltering in evacuation centers. Aid workers have also warned of potential outbreaks of the Zika and dengue viruses, both carried by mosquitoes, which may breed in stagnant water left by the storm. The Category 5 storm has been described as the worst storm ever to hit the country. Senior officials of the United States and South Korea met in Seoul today amid high tensions after North Korea's rocket launch earlier this month. The two sides focused on how to cooperate in efforts to announce effectiveness of sanctions in response to Pyongyang's recent nuclear test and long-range rocket launch. The US and South Korea are expected to begin large-scale annual military drills early in March. Officials from Afghanistan, Pakistan, the United States and China met in Kabul today. Their aim is to set a date for the first direct talks with the Taliban since a previous round in the peace process broke down last year. The four countries have called on the Taliban to enter peace talks with Kabul and work towards cutting violence that has killed thousands of Afghan civilians since the insurgency started almost 15 years ago. Time now for all the sports action and Sports Beat. World number one Novak Djokovic eased into the second round of the ATP Dubai Championships with a 6-1, 6-2 win over Tommy Roberto. Djokovic, who returned after winning the Australian Open for a sixth time, will now face Tunisian Malik Jaziri in the second round. The IAAF Ethics Board has provisionally suspended Kenyan Athletics CEO Isaac Mwangi in the interest of integrity of the sport. Mwangi has been suspended for 188 days pending investigation of the anti-doping control process in Kenya. Mwangi stood down as CEO last week, saying he was anxious to have his name cleared. Manchester United cruised into the FA Cup quarter-finals with 3-0 win against Shrewsbury. Chris Smalling, Juan Mata and Jesse Lingard scored the goals as United scored a last 8-8 with West Ham United at Old Trafford. The victory also temporarily eased the mounting pressure on United's manager Louis van Gaal. Arsenal will host Spanish champion Barcelona for their first leg Champions League last 16 tie. Barcelona, who are on a 32-match unbeaten run, are aiming to become the first team to retain the trophy in 26 years. In another tie, German champions Bayern Munich will take on Italian giant Juventus. Well, that's all from us. Goodbye.